There are these certain subtle signs that the seasons are changing. And I'm not talking about the weather or like the leaves turning on the trees.
Right, you're talking about the retail landscape.
Exactly. You walk into a supermarket or, an Asian bakery right around late summer or early autumn, and suddenly the entire front entrance is just completely transformed.
Oh, it's a massive shift.
There's this huge towering display. And I'm not talking about regular cardboard packaging or uh, simple plastic clamshells for baked goods.
No, not at all.
I'm talking about these beautifully constructed, incredibly intricate boxes. I mean, some of them look like literal treasure chests. They're covered in vibrant reds and deep blues and like shimmering gold lettering.
It really is a striking visual shift. You
Yeah.
go in for your regular groceries, and suddenly you're faced with this wall of sheer opulence.
Yeah, opulence is the perfect word.
The architecture of these displays alone is meant to grab your attention. It tells you that something significant is approaching.
And the thing is, if you didn't grow up with this particular tradition, you might walk past these displays for years and just think, what on earth are these beautiful boxes and why are they suddenly everywhere?
Right, can feel a bit mysterious to an outsider.
Totally. But today, for this deep dive, we are doing exactly what you do with a treasure chest. We are opening them up.
I love that.
Our mission today is to explore the culinary and cultural phenomenon of the Chinese mooncake. We want to cut through the packaging to really understand the history, the flavors, and the deep symbolism inside this practice. I mean, it's a tradition that spans hundreds of years during the Mid-Autumn Festival.
Which is such a fascinating topic to dissect because the mooncake is, well, it's so much more than just a seasonal pastry.
Right.
It's an anchor point for an entire cultural celebration. It sits right at this intersection of culinary architecture and deep social symbolism. You really can't separate the food from the function it serves in the society that created it.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Most of us see these incredible boxes every year. But if you aren't part of the culture, it feels a bit like a secret club, right?
Oh, absolutely.
You see the elaborate packaging, you notice the rather hefty price tags sometimes, and you wonder what exactly makes a mooncake a mooncake? And why are they such a colossal big deal?
Well, to answer that, we really have to start with the heavyweight champion of the mooncake world.
The classic.
Exactly. Before we can look at how the tradition has evolved over the years, we need to understand the most iconic, recognizable version. When the vast majority of people think of a mooncake, they are picturing the traditional Cantonese style.
Right, the one with that golden brown patterned crust. Though, I mean, calling it simply patterned feels like a massive understatement, honestly.
It really is. The exterior is incredibly ornate.
Yeah, these aren't just like little hash marks cut into the dough with a fork. They're highly complex raised decorations.
And that ornate nature of the crust serves a very specific purpose. It's not just a baker deciding to make a pastry look pretty for the window display.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that crust is literally molded. The dough is pressed into these intricate wooden or plastic molds. And those patterns usually feature the name of the bakery or specific Chinese characters that symbolize things like luck, longevity, or harmony.
Wow.
So the outside of the cake is carrying a literal readable message before you even take a bite.
It's basically a branded wax seal on a letter, but made of edible dough.
Oh,
That is so cool.
right.
And the structure of it is fascinating too. It has to be relatively sturdy to hold those precise shapes during the baking process.
Yeah.
But the real magic, and I think the real surprise for newcomers, is what happens when you cut through that ornate exterior to see what's on the inside.
Oh, the inside is where the real contrast happens. If you break open a classic Cantonese mooncake, you are usually met with a very specific traditional filling. The absolute classic baseline is lotus seed paste.
Which is incredibly smooth, very sweet, and has this luxurious, almost velvety texture.
It's very dense.
Super dense. But nestled right in the center of that sweet paste is the surprise. It's a salted egg yolk. Just this bright orange, perfectly round sphere that is visually designed to mimic a full moon sitting in the night sky.
The visual of it is so striking. You slice it down the middle, and you have this dark, dense paste surrounding a bright, glowing orange center.
So it's almost like a culinary geode.
Yeah.
You have this brown, structured, ornate rock on the outside, but you cut it open, and there's this bright orange moon hidden right in the center.
That's a great way to describe it.
But wait, let me push back on this flavor profile for a second,
Uh-huh.
because we are talking about sweet lotus paste surrounding a savory, cured, salted egg yolk.
Yes, we are.
If I bite into a Western dessert, like a chocolate truffle or a vanilla cake, and I hit a pocket of salted cured egg, I'm going to be deeply alarmed.
You'd probably send it back to the kitchen.
I would. Isn't that an incredibly intense flavor clash for what is supposed to be a dessert?
It is an intense clash. And that contrast is exactly the point. It's the defining feature of the experience. It's a bold, deliberate collision between the sweet, rich paste and the savory, salty yolk.
But why? Like, why engineer a dessert to have such a jarring collision of flavors?
Because of the culinary architecture of the pastry itself, you really have to consider the density.
Okay.
The traditional Cantonese mooncake is an incredibly heavy, thick dessert. It is packed with rich ingredients, oils, and sugars to achieve that velvety texture in the lotus seed paste.
Right. It's not a light sponge cake.
Exactly. If the entire pastry were nothing but that sweet paste, it would be overwhelmingly cloying. It would simply be too much for the palate to handle.
I see.
So the sharp, savory saltiness of the egg yolk is a necessary mechanism. It cuts through that dense sweetness and balances the palate, allowing you to actually enjoy the richness without being overpowered by it.
Oh, so it's the exact same principle behind putting coarse sea salt on dark chocolate or like salty caramel.
Precisely.
You need that savory anchor to elevate the sweet components.
You do. And that extreme density dictates how the pastry is actually consumed. I mean, this is not a muffin. It is not a cupcake.
Definitely not.
Eating a whole traditional Cantonese mooncake by yourself in one sitting would be a monumental and probably regrettable undertaking.
I can only imagine the sugar crash.
They're specifically designed for sharing.
Which explains a detail I've always wondered about. When you buy these boxes, they often come with a tiny little plastic knife tucked inside.
Yes.
I always thought that was just this quirky little addition, but it's an essential tool. You are supposed to take that knife and cut the mooncake into small wedges, sort of like a pizza, to distribute among your family.
The density forces the communal act.
Mm-hmm.
You share the richness because it's just too much for one person to bear alone.
I appreciate the mechanics of that. I really do. But let's be honest about modern eating habits. A heavy, dense, baked geode of lotus paste and salted egg yolk is a very specific, very traditional experience. And that naturally leads to a problem. Not everyone, especially younger generations who are used to lighter, varied desserts, is going to crave something quite so heavy every single autumn.
And if a tradition refuses to adapt to changing palates, it risks becoming a museum piece rather than a living practice.
Exactly.
That's where we see culinary evolution stepping in.
And here's where it gets really interesting, because the solution to that problem wasn't to just make the traditional mooncake a little bit smaller.
No, not at all.
The solution was a massive shift toward a completely different bite. We get the introduction of the snowy mooncake, or bing pi yu bing.
Yes, the snowy mooncakes.
And this isn't just a tiny tweak to the recipe, it is a complete transformation. It completely contrasts with the traditional Cantonese style because, first and foremost, it's never baked.
It completely abandons the oven. The traditional mooncake relies on that baking process to get the golden brown, sturdy crust. The snowy mooncake goes in the exact opposite direction. It's unbaked, it's kept in the fridge, and it's served cold.
The cold pastry. That totally changes the experience of the dessert right there.
Yeah.
And the crust isn't made of the traditional wheat dough either, is it?
No, it's made of glutinous rice flour. This gives it a soft, slightly translucent, and highly chewy texture.
It sounds to me like mochi's sophisticated cousin.
That is the perfect analogy. It has that same delicate, chewy exterior that you find in mochi. And because the exterior is so light, fresh, and cold, it completely opens up the possibilities for the interior.
Because you don't need the heavy stuff anymore.
Right. You don't need the heavy lotus seed paste and the salted egg yolk to stand up to a baked crust.
So the fillings have undergone a total revolution. Bakeries are offering incredibly contemporary flavors now. We're talking chocolate, mango, green tea, taro, even like ice cream or durian fillings.
Durians is a big one, yeah.
It really proves that there's a contemporary mooncake out there for absolutely every preference.
And the strategy behind this is brilliant. By adapting the ingredients, the textures, and the serving temperature, bakeries are doing more than just selling a new product.
What are they doing?
They're ensuring that younger demographics are still actively excited to participate in the Mid-Autumn Festival. They are preserving the core ritual of the event by updating the vehicle that delivers it.
But wait, I have to challenge this evolution for a second. Go ahead. If you think about the ship of Theseus, if you replace every single part of a ship, is it still the same ship?
Ah, I see where you're going.
Right. If the ingredients are completely different, using glutinous rice instead of baked dough, and the flavors are completely contemporary, using cold mango instead of dense lotus seed, and the serving style is chilled instead of room temperature,
Yeah.
what actually keeps it a mooncake?
Yeah.
I mean, if I hand you a cold, chewy, mango-filled rice pastry, why aren't we just calling it a fruit mochi? What is the anchor that makes it authentically a mooncake?
The anchor is the shape. The shape is the absolute non-negotiable element of the pastry.
The roundness.
Yes, the roundness. And that brings us to the most profound aspect of this entire cultural practice. The roundness is not an aesthetic choice. It's not a convenience for the baker.
All right.
In Chinese culture, the circle or the round shape represents completeness and reunion. The specific concept is tuanyuan.
Tuanyuan, meaning reunion.
Yeah.
Like the coming together of people after a period of separation.
Exactly. And the visual poetry of the Mid-Autumn Festival relies entirely on that shape. Think about the physical setting of the celebration.
Okay, picture it.
The festival takes place when the full moon in the sky is at its brightest and most perfectly round. The family gathers to eat a feast, traditionally seated around a large round table.
Right?
And the mooncake resting on that table, which is then divided among the family members, is perfectly round.
The moon, the table, the cake. It's this incredible thematic alignment.
It really is.
The pastry itself is a physical, edible manifestation of family unity. As long as the family is together, the circle's complete. So as long as that contemporary mango snowy mooncake is round and shared under that moon, it fulfills the cultural requirement of tuanyuan.
Exactly. The ingredients can change to suit the era, but the geometry cannot because the geometry is the message.
Wow.
And that deep desire for tuanyuan, for reunion and completeness, is what powers the massive social engine of the festival. And that is the gift-giving culture.
Which brings us full circle back to the supermarket.
Back to the displays.
Back to those towering displays of intricate boxes from our intro. Because you don't generally just buy a single mooncake for yourself to eat on a Tuesday afternoon.
No, almost never.
You buy them in sets to give away. You buy them for your family, your close friends, your colleagues, and like your business partners.
It is the ultimate social currency of the autumn season. Gifting a box of mooncakes is far more than just sharing a seasonal snack with someone. It is a tangible, physical way to communicate your relationship to that person.
It's symbolic.
Highly symbolic. It's a way to say, I miss you, or I value our relationship, or even I deeply respect our business partnership.
So what does this all mean for the consumer? It means The box is basically an edible greeting card,
That's a great way to put it.
but it's not just a casual greeting. The packaging we see in those displays is deeply elegant. I mean, we're talking about heavy materials, magnetic clasps, silk linings, embossed gold lettering.
They are works of art.
They are graceful, they are stylish, and they are incredibly expensive looking. Why is so much effort put into the cardboard and silk rather than just the food?
Because the elegance of the packaging is a direct reflection of the level of respect the giver has for the recipient.
Oh, I see.
The box is the metric of your esteem. If you are giving a gift to a highly respected elder in your family, or, say, a vital, high value client at your company, handing them a flimsy paper bag with a pastry inside isn't going to communicate respect.
No, that would probably be an insult.
Exactly. You need an elegant presentation to visually demonstrate the depth of your respect and the high value you place on that specific connection. The medium is the message.
I can definitely see how that social dynamic works,
Yeah.
especially in a culture that heavily values respect and hierarchy. But I have to push back on the reality of this practice for a second.
Okay, let's hear it.
When you have a cultural expectation of mandatory gift giving, and the social currency relies heavily on how elaborate and elegant the boxes are,
Right.
doesn't the obligation eventually overshadow the actual enjoyment of the dessert? Like,
Oh.
are people actually sitting down and eating all these mooncakes, or are they just passing these fancy boxes back and forth out of duty?
You've hit on a very real tension that exists in the modern celebration of the festival.
It has to happen, right?
Oh, it does. When does the social obligation overtake the original, genuine sentiment? Because the reality is, during the weeks leading up to the Mid Autumn Festival, boxes of mooncakes are absolutely regifted.
I knew it.
A family or a business might receive 10 or 15 elegant boxes from various acquaintances. They physically cannot consume that much dense lotus seed paste.
No one could.
Right. So the boxes sit uneaten, or they're quickly passed along to someone else.
It's the dreaded fruitcake syndrome.
The fruitcake syndrome,
It's
exactly.
a beautifully packaged, highly traditional item that functions more as a heavy paperweight being traded around town than a dessert people actually want to eat.
It is a very similar dynamic to the Christmas fruitcake, but I think that's precisely why the culinary evolution we discussed earlier, the rise of the contemporary snowy mooncakes, is so vital.
God, they fixed the problem.
They do. The evolution of the flavors, making them lighter, serving them cold, filling them with modern ingredients that people actually crave, is a way of reclaiming the joy of the holiday.
They're rescuing the dessert from becoming just an empty ornament.
Exactly. If you give someone a box of cold, refreshing mango and green tea snowy mooncakes, they're going to re-gift that box.
Yeah, they're going to eat them.
They're going to put it in their fridge and look forward to eating it. It ensures that the mooncake isn't just a symbol passed from hand to hand out of obligation, but something that a family actually wants to slice open and enjoy together. It grounds the tradition back in the actual physical enjoyment of a shared meal.
It brings it right back to Tuan Yuan. You actually want to gather around the table to eat it. That is a brilliant way for a culture to self-correct and keep a tradition alive.
It really is. It's survival through adaptation.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today. We started by looking at the heavyweight champion, the traditional Cantonese style. We unpacked the ornate, dense pastry that relies on the intense, deliberate contrast between sweet, heavy lotus paste and a savory, salty egg yolk.
The culinary geode that requires you to physically share it with others because of its sheer density.
Yes, the geode. And then we saw how shifting tastes drove an evolution into the contemporary snowy mooncakes, ditching the oven for the fridge, trading baked dough for chewy glutinous rice, and introducing modern flavors to prove that tradition can and honestly must adapt to the present time.
Absolutely.
But the fascinating takeaway is that whether you are eating a heavy baked lotus paste treat or a cold mango dessert, the core identity remains completely untouched.
Because that core is Tuanyuan. The elegant boxes, the specific ingredients, the changing temperatures, they're all secondary to the round shape. They all point back to the completeness of the family gathered together under a round moon.
So if you keep those mechanics in mind, the next time you walk into a supermarket and see that massive, towering display of ornate boxes, it transforms. It's no longer just a confusing seasonal product push.
Not at all.
You're looking at a rich, multi-layered cultural artifact. You are looking at a society's mechanism for communicating respect, preserving relationships, and enforcing family unity, all baked or chilled into a single dessert.
It's a perfect example of how studying what we eat can reveal exactly how we relate to one another.
Absolutely. But before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. We've seen how the mooncake evolved from a dense, baked lotus seed pastry into a cold, contemporary mango treat, just to keep up with modern palates and save the tradition from the dreaded food cake syndrome.
Right.
But as global food cultures continue to blend at this incredibly rapid pace, driven by social media, international trade, and shifting climate realities, what radically new forms might the mooncake take 50 or 100 years from now?
That is a great question.
If we went from baked dough to refrigerated rice flour in a few decades, what new flavors, textures, or even culinary technologies will be required to ensure that the ancient tradition of Tuanyuan survives the next century? Will we be 3D printing perfect spheres of flavor? Will we engineer entirely new sweet and savory contrasts?
Who knows?
Whatever it looks like, as long as it's round, the reunion continues. Thanks for diving in with us today.